This is a slide that kind of gets at the heart of why we need to think about extended grazing systems when we talk about ruminant livestock production. This is the budget for a fall calving cow on a hay ration. And there's lots of different pieces to this budget, but the one that I want to point out is this winter feed, and that's primarily hay. When we look at all the pieces of a ruminant livestock budget, the biggest one by far, which is going to be 50 to 60%, is winter feed, and that's going to be primarily hay. When we think about reducing the cost of production, there's lots of pieces in this pie, but most of them are relatively small. If we really want to cut production costs, we've got to focus on the biggest piece of the pie, and that's going to be hay feeding during the winter months. And that's one of the reasons that we want to extend the grazing season, is to reduce the cost of producing that calf. All these other things, replacement bull, vet and medicine, salt and mineral, are relatively small pieces of that pie. The other thing that's interesting about farmers is when you work with the farmer and times get tough and the calf prices are low, or lamb prices, or whatever ruminant livestock you're working with, they'll start to cut things, but they tend to cut things they write checks for. And a lot of times we don't write a check directly for hay. It's mostly indirectly. And things we write checks for, like a replacement bull or vet and medicine or mineral, whenever we start to cut back on those programs, we open ourselves up to risk within that system. And so really what we need to be focusing on to improve profitability is this big piece of the pie, that hay feeding during the winter months. This is kind of a simple diagram, but it gets a really important point across. And that point is that the good Lord gave us some really efficient forage harvesters. And it's up to us to utilize them as much as we possibly can. They replace a tractor in a hay baler, in a rake, and they even fertilize as they go along. And they don't even use too much diesel fuel. The point is that anything that we can do to let them harvest forage for themselves more days of the year is going to be positive for the bottom line. Dr. Lacefield, who was at the University of Kentucky, used to say a day grazed is $1 saved. And there's a lot of truth to that. Generally speaking, the first extra grazing day is going to be the biggest savings. And as we get towards the last extra grazing day, it's going to diminish a little bit. But generally speaking, we're going to save about $1 a day if we can graze rather than feed a conserved forage in a grazing system.